You might be one of the 3 out of 10 people that are providing care for your parents in assisted living or some type of in-home health care.
You are listening to Wealth Talks, and today you're going to hear about the case for insuring parents. Like you said, Dad, 3 out of every 10 people in America are taking care of their elderly parents.
That's a really crazy statistic, and it's only expected to go up because by 2030, we're going to see that nearly double, and by 2035, we're going to see it even at a higher level than that, simply because of longevity rates of elderly people and the fact that a lot of elderly people are unprepared for long-term healthcare costs.
Yeah, so the basic idea here is that these kids that are taking care of their parents now, they're taking a lot of time in order to do this. I mean, how long does it take to, on average, to take care of someone's parents?
Well, that really depends. You know, there's 6 things of daily activity that you have to that qualify you for long-term care. If you can't feed yourself, if you can't dress yourself, if you can't, bathe and take care of your own hygiene, maybe you need help getting up, maybe you need help walking. Those are all things that are looked at, and if you can't do 2 of those 6, then you're considered eligible for long-term care. Well, maybe you're just one of those. And so now you're not eligible for any long-term care. Medicare is not going to help you because you're not eligible. And if you don't have financial savings, then you're going to be depending on family to come in to maybe cook for you because maybe that's all that you need. Or maybe everything's fine, you can cook and whatnot, but maybe you can't get in and out of the shower by yourself. And so this is hitting Americans, families all across the board. And now adult children are spending their retirement funds taking care of elderly parents, or they're spending their children's college fund to take care of elderly parents, or they're giving up an occupation of one or both parents or part of one of an occupation, working part-time instead of full-time to provide these needs for the inadequate savings that was taking place.
Yeah. You know, Dad, you have an article that was published by Insurance Newsnet here a while back. I'm going to include the link to this article in the resources on the show today, so you'll be able to check this out. But it says, on average, these people that are caring for their family spend 20 hours a week doing this. That's half-time job. More than 1 out of every 10 of those people are providing 40+ hours of care per week. That adds up after a while, and you can see why. It's so hard to save anything while you're doing that. And so ways that we can find to rescue this, one of the options is to have life insurance on the parents that will pay back the children that are acting as caregivers when the parent finally does pass on.
That's really important because, like we said, if you're just unable to do one of those 6 things, you don't qualify for long-term health care. You don't qualify for Medicare. You've got to have at least 2 of those, and not everybody has those 2, and that's taken about $375 billion out of our economy because those people are providing care and they're not getting reimbursed for it to their parents. So that is making the middle class poor and poorer. It's one of those things, a transfer of wealth that's taken place. And because long-term care insurance won't take care of it, the only other true viable option is to have a life insurance policy on the parents before they get to the stage where they need long-term care.
Okay. So ideally, we get that policy in place while the parents are young. Maybe the parents even buy this policy for themselves years before they know that they'll need this care.
Late 40s, early 50s.
Sure.
Maybe even up into the early 60s is a real good time to be thinking about that. Why someone is still in relatively good health, has a decent income, has a nice net worth, and then to just shift the responsibility of those payments to the adult child when they get to a place where they can afford to.
So there's the ideal solution right there to be able to finance that long-term care, even if you haven't been able to save enough along the way to make that happen. What happens if you're listening to this and you have parents already that are getting the long-term care? What options are available there? Can you insure parents at this point?
It becomes almost impossible to do that because now they are their life expectancy has been limited due to their disability that's forced the long-term care to come on in the first place. Mm-hmm. So this is something that needs to be planned for well in advance. And I don't know of any grandparent today that would be happy in knowing that their children are spending their grandchildren's fortune just for long-term care.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody.
And that's really what is happening in this situation when, more than 3 out of 10 Americans are taking time off work, giving up income, or actually quitting a job to take care of their adult parents. And here's the thing, it's not just 2 parents anymore either. It could be 4 parents or maybe even more because we don't know how many divorces and remarriages or deaths and remarriages have taken place. And so that expense can really hit some families harder than others because they might have more than 2 or 4, or they might have 6 or 8 or even more quote unquote parents or step parents that they're taking care of.
Yeah. So what about this case? Let's say that the parents don't make a lot of money. They haven't been able to save very well over the years. They're not ready. They're not to the point where they're going to need long-term care yet, but the children have been able to make money, to save a lot of money, but they want to make sure that caring for their parents won't cut into their lifestyle or their grandchildren's inheritance. Is there something that the kids can do now so that they can make sure, can they insure their parents, even if the parents can't afford the premium yet? They're not in long-term care.
Not in every case.
Okay.
Now, it's the insured person here has to be the elderly parent if there's going to be any reimbursement.
Sure, the death benefit.
The death benefit. And so if their income and net worth isn't up to a certain point, it's going to limit how much insurance they can have on them. If they can't just afford the premiums, but they have a lot of assets that they've owned that aren't generating money, like a house and maybe some property and things like that, well, then there is a way to allow the adult children who have a higher discretionary income to be the payer on an adult parent's policy, one of their parents' policy. That's a little bit harder to get through underwriting, though, because it's always based on the net worth and the income of the person that's being insured.
Sure. So there may be some options there, but that's going to have to be a case-by-case basis. Is that what I hear you saying?
But the most important thing is thinking about this early enough so that we get the policies in force because, long-term care insurance can sometimes fit a need. But like I said, if you're only needing one of those assisted living conditions, it's not going to kick in.
It's not going to kick in.
And it's never going to kick in for a child to come and do that care. It's never going to pay for that. So if it's not to the point where the elderly parents want to move into an assisted living or have assisted living that is reimbursable come into their home, then you could still be exposed even if you do have a long-term care product.
Yeah.
Because those things have to be checked off by certain people with credentials like medical doctors and Medicare and things like that. And the insurance company wants to know who's providing this care. Are they certified? If they're not, if they're just,
So that rate, that you could conceivably be paying a higher cost for the care if you wanted to use the long-term care insurance rather than having the kids come in first. Yeah, and that just really what this is doing is it just takes options off the table if you've depended on the long-term care insurance totally at this point. What we're saying is you want to keep all these options on the table until you know which ones you want to use.
And the problem that we're really facing, John, is that people have fallen into the trap of following typical financial advice. Instead of going back to the bedrock traditional financial advice that we had that has built America up, and that was, how do you fund your home? How do you fund your mortgage? And how do you fund your whole life insurance policy? That's traditional financing. That's what made America great. I mean, wasn't it Andrew Carnegie that said whole life insurance is one of the pillars of Americanism?
Yes.
Without it, the banking system doesn't work. The private sector doesn't work.
Yeah, he said it was a system of saving for the average person.
And it has saved America more than once when there's been a recession and typical investments have failed people, and they can fall back on the traditional guarantees of life insurance to pull them through.
That's right. Even back in the Great Depression, the beginning of the Great Depression, when the banks closed for a holiday,
yes,
they opened up, no money. The life insurance companies had a half holiday at that time. They opened up. Life insurance companies have to keep reserves on hand because they don't know when somebody's going to die, when they're going to have to pay these death benefits.
That's
out.
right.
So they had this money on hand. They could give out policy loans as people would come to them. Now, they did something that's very similar to what Jimmy Stewart did in the movie It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes.
If you haven't seen that movie, check it out. Great Christmas time movie, one of our family's favorites. But what Jimmy Stewart did, he says, okay, how much do you need to get by on for the next 2 weeks?
Yes.
They give him part of it then, come back for more later. And so that's the one way that the life insurance industry saved American families during the Great Depression.
Yeah, anytime there's a run on the banks or the insurance companies, there's going to be not enough money there to pay the people that are running to get their money back out. Mm-hmm. And that's because that banks don't have to keep near the reserves that life insurance companies do. And life insurance companies, in their wisdom, like you said, John, said, hey, let's just space this out a little bit. We got the money here, but we'll give it to you on a week-by-week basis or a month-by-month basis as you need it, but let's not take everything out right now, and we'll promise that we'll guarantee these contracts to be good. And they did. People were able to keep their houses, otherwise they'd have lost them. They were able to carry on with their life. Without that life insurance savings, America would have gone bankrupt.
Yeah, that is so wonderful. Such a wonderful story. So as you look at the issue today of the long-term care, are there any words of wisdom that you have to share with everyone today? I know you've both of your parents have been through assisted living. Grandma still's in assisted living.
Yes, and Michelle's parents are in assisted living as well.
Yes.
And so without the life insurance that we have been able to grow and build, taking care of your grandparents would have been an impossibility. And it's nice to know that some of that money is going to be reimbursed in the future because we were able to plan ahead and get some life insurance in force so that happens. Now, here's the sad thing. There's not a month that goes by in our office, it doesn't seem like, and we got a call this morning where someone had bought life insurance, and now they're in their 80s, and they're finding the premium is going skyrocketing.
Oh, that universal life stuff.
Yes. This is so detrimental to people. There's been multiple insurance companies that have been sued over this, and yet there's really not anything these policyholders can do because it is in the policy, it's in the contract, that you're buying a universal life policy. It is based on a term policy. Mm-hmm. Term is renting insurance. And not only is it based on term insurance, it's based on renewable term or annual renewable term. That means every year the premium goes up, or every 5 years, or however the contract reads. So as you get older, the cost of your insurance, the death benefit, starts climbing. So the case today, $6,000 premium is jumping to $18,000 for renewal next year.
Wow.
And it's not going to stop there. The next year it's going to go even beyond $18,000. And then the year after that, it's going to be higher than that. And that is a policy that is unsustainable. And that's why we have such an adamant resistance against universal life. whether it's variable universal life, indexed universal life, or just plain old universal life, it's always dependent on the interest rate that's being earned on extra payments you've paid for insurance you don't need in your early years to make up for the cost of increase of insurance as you get older, and it never works.
Yeah, so don't think of universal life insurance as permanent insurance that's going to be around, especially when you're planning for to reimburse the kids for long-term care or expenses for the parents. That's not going to just, that universal life's probably not going to be around to fulfill that need, and so you have to use whole life insurance for that type of thing.
We have to use whole life insurance. Ideally, participating whole life insurance that has been loaded up front with single premium paid up insurance so that the cash values are high, can even help offset the cost as you're going, not just waiting for the death benefit to reimburse.
That's right. So one more word before we sign off for this week. Coming up July 27th, that's a Saturday, we're going to be in Bellingham, Washington, doing a wealth workshop there hosted by Mark and Veronica Daly. You may remember Mark was a guest here on the podcast a few weeks ago, sharing their amazing story.
That's going to be a great time, isn't it, John?
It sure will be. So you can, I'll put the link in the podcast resources. You can go there, you see about the location, and get registered for that either online or give our office a call at 702-660-7000. And
let's not forget that our cruise in the Caribbean is coming up at October 19th through the 26th, I believe. And you'll put the link to that in there. The cruise line is filling up its cabins, so if you're planning on attending with us and hearing us share more about wealth, not just money, but spiritual, emotional, mental well-being.
Takes a combination of all of these.
Dr. John Bergman will be joining us, as well as Chris Donham, and we're looking forward to it. So make sure you get your registrations in there. We'll get the link up on this podcast site for you.
That's right. You are listening to Wealth Talks, where we talk about solutions, money, and other things that create wealth in your life. Have a wonderful week.